Okay, any adult who comes between me and my child and says, we have a secret, I'm going to help you deal with your parents, is a predator. What our liberal friends don't know, and they can't know, and they won't ever know, is what it's like for those who fall down this rabbit hole and then fall for the lie. Sit down with your child, have these conversations, or a secular world will. Let's talk about Bill 5599. No, it is not a bill that says that the state can kidnap your kid and make them transgender. It is a bill that says that kids can run away from home and seek shelter and then be given access to abortion and then procedures that are called healthcare, which we'll look at as enumerated by Blue Cross of Washington, and receive that health care, as it's called, without parental knowledge. Right? We saw this before with State Senate Bill 5395. It's something that's harmful that's packaged in something that's good. And you'd have to be an absolute monster to be opposed to what is ostensibly presented, and then the real harmful aspects of it are couched within the bill. It's like a Trojan horse. 5395 was posited as though it was giving children who are victims of abuse at home a better way to come forward. But then packaged within it was just wholesale revision to public school curricula, and then also a whole litany of basically pornographic supplementary resources that were made available, resources that are starting to appear this year now in my kids' library. And my kids actually go to a school that seems to really have its head on straight. So just imagine what it's like elsewhere in the greater Seattle area. Here is the actual bill itself, as this is the version that was passed through the House on April 13th. Okay, it is State Senate Bill 5599. And it begins, it's framed as though it's relating to the supporting youth and young adults seeking protected healthcare services. All right, it's an amendment of a revised Code of Washington 13.32a.082 and creating new sections. All right, here it is. The legislature finds that unsheltered homelessness for youth poses a serious threat to their health and safety. All right, everybody believes that. No one is opposed, right, to efforts that are taken to legitimately, actually help homeless youth. The Trevor Project, right, we'll look into that source later, has found that 1 in 3 transgender youth report attempting suicide. Homelessness amongst transgender youth can further endanger an already at-risk population. So even just a couple of sentences in, there's a straw man here. Parents are made the bad guys. And it is the role of Washington State, the self-deputized role, to save children from their parents. All right, we saw Senator Tana Sen even present it this way, speaking directly to the youth: Washington State loves you. I love you. And so I'm giving you access to these mutilating surgeries without your parents' knowledge. Okay, any adult who comes between me and my child and says, we have a secret, I'm going to help you deal with your parents, is a predator. And now Washington State has assumed that role. Again, like I said, we'll delve more into this as well, that it's true. The reason that suicidality is so common among transgender individuals is because they are suffering. They are afflicted. The answer is not to delve deeper into the depraved lie that they are not the gender that they patently, obviously, actually, anatomically are. The answer is the gospel of Jesus Christ, and nothing else will do. Nothing else will do. Homelessness amongst transgender youth can further endanger an already at-risk population. The legislature further finds that barriers to accessing shelter can place a chilling effect on exiting unsheltered homelessness, and therefore create additional risk and dangers for youth. Youth seeking certain medical services are especially at risk and vulnerable. Okay, meaning vulnerable to their parents intervening and saying, no, you don't need to have your trachea shaved. No, you don't need a facelift. No, you don't need rhinoplasty. That's what they mean by at risk. And I'll show you that just as enumerated by Blue Cross of Washington. Therefore, the legislature intends to remove barriers to accessing temporary licensed shelter accommodations for youth seeking certain protected healthcare services. Right? It's going to go on to further define which shelters constitute shelters. And the page 1, line 7 text says, if a licensed overnight youth shelter or another licensed organization with a stated mission to provide services to homeless or runaway youth and their families shelters a child and knows at the time of providing shelter that the child is away from a lawfully prescribed residence or home without parental permission, it must contact the youth's parent within 72 hours, but preferably within 24 hours following the time that the youth is admitted to the shelter or other licensed organization's program. The notification must include the whereabouts of the youth, a description of the youth's physical and emotional condition, and the circumstances surrounding the youth's contact with the shelter organization. This is critical right here. If there are compelling reasons not to notify the parent, the shelter organization must instead notify the department. Right there. That is the pivotal point. All right. We noticed that still the current policy is that if a child shows up at your shelter, you've got to notify the parent or guardian. But here on line 18, page 2, if there are compelling reasons not to notify the parent, then instead they must notify the department. That's where it happens. So now you have what follows in a list of definitions. The word compelling is defined. The word circumstances is defined. But watch what happens when we actually scroll down to the definitions for compelling. Okay, this is now page 3, line 1. Compelling reasons include, but are not limited to, garble. Okay, like if you, maybe I'm just misunderstanding this. Maybe this is written in legalese and I don't have the legal background to interpret it. But what I'm seeing is open parentheses, comma, strike through on the word circumstances, close parentheses, and an underlined colon. So it looks like they began to go into circumstances, and it looks as though this thing passed the House without being complete, without even defining what a compelling reason is. Now, we do see a definition for circumstances that indicate notifying the parent or legal guardian will be subject to the minor to abuse or neglect as defined by, and here's Revised Code of Washington 26.44.020. All right, now this is still standard procedure. Here is what's referred to here on page 3, line 5, Revised Code of Washington. That's what RCW stands for, 26.44.020. Here's that bill. It's just a basic working definition for what constitutes abuse or neglect. Abuse or neglect means sexual abuse, sexual exploitation, or injury of a child by any person under circumstances which cause harm to the child's health, welfare, or safety, excluding conduct permitted under Revised Code of Washington 9A.16.100, or the negligent treatment or maltreatment of a child by a person responsible for or providing care to the child. An abused child is a child who has been subjected to child abuse or neglect as defined in this section. And then according to item 2, child or children means any person under the age of 18 years of age. So that is RCW 26.44.020. All right, and I think everybody's on board with that, but look at this. Or when a minor is seeking or receiving protected healthcare services. Protected healthcare services means gender affirming treatment as defined in Revised Code of Washington 74.09.675. And this is the misnomer of the century: reproductive healthcare services. I mean, it's code for abortion, but it's also the death of language. Pro-lifers are not trying to stop you from reproducing, and in fact, you've already reproduced once you've had an abortion. The word abortion doesn't even make sense. You haven't stopped the pregnancy. You've just killed the baby. You were pregnant. You didn't abort the pregnancy. You have already reproduced once you're pregnant. And we want you to be healthy and reproduce. You're working against reproductive health. You killed the child. And this is Revised Code of Washington 7409875. Right? When the department receives a report under subsection 1 of this section, it shall make good faith attempt to notify the parent that a report has been received and offer services designed to resolve the conflict and accomplish reunification of the family. All right. When the department receives a report under subsection 1 of the section for a minor who is seeking or receiving protected healthcare services, it shall offer to make referrals on behalf of the minor for appropriate behavioral health services and offer services designed to resolve the conflict and accomplish a reunification of the family. So lines 18 and 19 offer to make referrals on behalf of the minor for the health services we're about to look at. And then lines 20 and 21 at least pay lip service to the hope of actually getting this child back with their parents. But what's listed first is referring them to people who are going to mutilate their kid. Nothing in this section prohibits any person, unlicensed youth shelter, or runaway and homeless youth program from immediately reporting the identity and location of any minor who was away from a lawfully prescribed residence or home without parental permission more promptly than required under this section. Nothing in this section limits a person's duty to report child abuse or neglect as required by our Revised Code of Washington, or removes the requirement that the law enforcement agency of the jurisdiction with in which the person lives be notified. This is right here on page 3, line 1. Compelling reasons include but are not limited to, and you can see where circumstances was crossed out. Circumstances indicates that notifying the parent or legal guardian will subject the minor to abuse or neglect as defined by, and we saw this is pretty standard, but here it is, when a minor is seeking or receiving protected health care services, and then protected health care services immediately followed up as a definition of by gender affirming treatment. And this is from Revised Code of Washington 7409675. All right. These are on the Blue Cross website, what is covered as gender affirming treatment. And this is written in conjunction with this law that's now in effect for the state of Washington. Right? These are the treatments that if a child is seeking these treatments and the parents are denying it, that now constitutes abuse. And it's not that the state could kidnap your kid and take them away and make them transgender. It's that your child is deep down a rabbit hole of transgenderism. They could run away to any shelter without any signs of abuse and then tell them that they are being denied gender affirming care as enumerated here. And that would constitute abuse, and they could be referred to a service provider without notifying the parents, potentially. All right, these supposedly life-saving treatments include breast augmentation. That is not a life-saving treatment. Chemical peel, dermabrasion, facial feminization surgeries. Notice this, that you also have facial masculinization surgeries. They've just affirmed the gender binary, even in the terminology that they use. And also just facelift. My parents won't let me get a facelift, and so I'm being abused. You need to refer me to somebody and not tell my mom and dad. A forehead brow lift. Genital modification. God help us. What Orwellian Nazi nightmare are we living in? Hairline modification. Can I get hairline modification actually while we're on the subject? Can the taxpayer pay for mine? Because I'm actually a sane person that needs that. That's why I'm wearing a hat right now. Hair removal. Hysterectomy. Lip enhancement. My mom and dad are not giving me lip enhancement surgery. And so I'm going to run away to a shelter. They're going to refer me to a service provider, and mom and dad are not even going to know about it. They're going to shave my trachea. All right. Mom and dad, I need my trachea shaved so my Adam's apple appears less convincing and makes it slightly less obvious that I'm obviously a male. And because mom and dad have denied me this procedure, I'm going to go run away. Rhinoplasty. That's a nose job. This is not a life-saving procedure. No child is going to have their life saved because they had rhinoplasty. Right? You're not going to stop a kid from committing suicide by giving in to their demands for a brow lift, a face lift, a chemical peel, having their trachea shaved, having their skin resurfaced, having liposuction, getting a nose job, having, God help us, mastectomy. That's only life-saving in the event that somebody has advanced breast cancer. A penile implant is not a life-saving procedure. This is way beyond jumping the shark, state of Washington. This is not a life-saving procedure. Voice modification. And then here's just the catch-all. Any combination of gender-affirming procedures, including revisions to prior treatment. So this is the actual bill 5599. It's available online. You can see that it does include a traditional reference to what constitutes sexual abuse, but then it adds on to that a child who's seeking gender-affirming care, and also, by the way, abortion. It's a Trojan horse. The opening wording makes it sound so compassionate and good that we're caring about homeless youth, particularly transgender homeless youth. And then the wording goes on to make a way for a kid to run away to a shelter and then frame themselves as if they are abused because they're being denied this kind of health care. And then that shelter has the ability to refer them to service providers without notifying mom and dad. I want to talk to particularly the dads. If your child is given just unfettered internet access and is falling deep down a rabbit hole, then your child's in danger. And it may be too late, but it's not too late to act, to try, speak to your kid, have a conversation with them. What our liberal friends don't know, and they can't know, and they won't ever know, is what it's like for those who fall down this rabbit hole and then fall for the lie. When they come out on the other side and they've had procedures like these done, they've had hormone treatments, puberty blockers, things that have a profoundly detrimental effect on the developing body. And they come out the other side only to realize that it was all a lie, it was all futile, none of it was any good. I didn't need to have my trachea shaved. I needed to know God. I needed the truth. I needed to know that there is grace and love from a good God, that Jesus is Lord. And because of his resurrection, I'm forgiven for every last one of my sins. This is the basis. This is the beginning of mental health and well-being. This is what your kids need. And these children who are running away from their homes and into shelters as proxies for this kind of treatment, they don't have good fathers at home. So if you have been keeping your kid at arm's length and just letting the internet raise them, it's time to pull that plug and stop funding the means by which an off-the-rails culture is poisoning your kid's mind, and it's time to actually be a dad. Sit down with your child, have these conversations, or a secular world will. If you need help knowing how to even begin this conversation, there's a free book called At the Table. It's at jessecampbellministries.com. I'll see you guys next time, hopefully with some more optimistic news.